I've been looking forward to this artist study. This is Odilon Redon, who's an artist I was not familiar with until Plums Inc. brought him up. What exciting work. I decided I wanted to go with portraits because been doing a lot of portrait stuff this year. Looked at Sargent a couple months ago. And so I thought it would be interesting to look at these in light of the recent portrait work. Also, I decided to go with color because been looking at color lately too. Looked at the aforementioned group of 7 artist study stream. There was a lot of good color stuff in there, and so trying to build on these artist studies. So I have also prepared, as I did with the group of 7, I prepared the grayscale slideshow. So we'll look at those as needed. As with most of these, I try not to look too much at the work before the stream because I want to come at this as I would if I was doing it by myself. I think that it's really this is a really valuable thing, and I think that when I was a younger artist, seeing professors do this was a really valuable skill. And every time I get to see an artist do this, it's a really valuable skill. And seeing them do it like fresh, not prepared, like not with a list of things to talk about, but kind of naturally, I think is really valuable. So I hope that you will all find the value in that. And as usual, I hope that you will all contribute your thoughts and your insights and your questions and whatever you feel like to this, because it's much better if we can do this all together. There's a couple things that jump out at me. First of all, I feel like for maybe the your average person might look at some of these and think that they are perhaps maybe naive or outsidery. Liv looked at some of these and she said they looked unfinished, and I think that is inaccurate, but I can understand why people might think that. So before I start, I want to show some of these. So this guy knows what he's doing. Like, he's a highly skilled artist. So I picked a few portraits that are more maybe more traditional or less out there, at least by his standards. So like, this is a really well done portrait, like in the traditional sense. This guy is a skilled artist who's very accomplished, and because he's so accomplished, he's able to go back and take more risks, do things that are a little more out there. So his work is really beautiful. See, there's a lot of portraits of his wife. I think that's her. Look at this, amazing. Like this, like he could hang with any artist from throughout history as far as technical skill goes. So just make sure that you get that in your heads before we look at some of his weirder things. I love this piece. It was so hard not to choose this one to look at, but it was not kind of, it didn't fit with what I'm going for. I'm looking at more of the non-traditional stuff. Yeah, there is a lot of Klimt in there, isn't there, Rosie? Absolutely. With all that excessive preamble out of the way, why don't we start with, well, let's start with this one since it's right here. The first thing I notice about this is that he's got this cool border. I like the figure is really filling the space here. The gap between the top of the head and the border, pretty small. And same with the left side here. Little poke of hair comes out. So interesting here, a couple of things I'm noticing at the start. The colors are all primary colors, and they're all pretty saturated. I wonder how the values, the colors read, since they're all really saturated. I guess the reds would be the least saturated maybe, and then the blues. Radon doesn't use black contour lines almost at all. Yeah, I'm gonna use pencil lines. It looks like there's a little bit Looks like there's a little bit of line. Very, very small amount. That border is line. I wonder how he made that. I wonder if he scratched that out. I think these are pastels, maybe oil pastels. And I wonder if he went in and then took a knife or something and scratched out that black border. It goes along the top and along the left. There's no border on the bottom. And then the right has kind of, that's interesting. The right has the only instance of a secondary color that I see in here, which is some green scratched lines down the side, like not lines, a green scratchy kind of bits of color. The random green on the side is interesting. Yeah. Slight red contour line at the bottom left. Yeah, right on the shoulder, right? A little bit of a line there, and it looks like there's a little bit in the crown. It's also red. And I can't tell if I think the front of the face, that looks more like an outline than it does where the yellow touches the blue. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? The front of the face looks like a contour line. And that would be in keeping with the kind of Sargent idea of focal point. So for all these artist studies, or at least for most of them, focal point has been a very important thing. So keep that in mind here too. Do you think it's plausible, Crochet, the scratching out of the black lines for that border? It looks like it. It looks more like it's reductive. But I'm gonna, since I'm using different tools, I'm gonna draw it in pencil. They keep the same direction all the way through, except there's just a few lines over here that crosshatch. That's interesting. I feel like that's something I might do, is put a little bit more in the corner to hold it. The colors are all primary colors, and yet the emotion on the character seems kind of sad, maybe melancholy, and that's not what we would associate with the color palette. So that's an interesting way of producing contrast. I think I should use darker pencil line for the stuff that looks like he drew in pencil, and then I'll use lighter line just for my reference lines. And I need to think about value, so let's do that too. I think that the brightest value, the lightest value, is very interesting. The lightest value looks like it's here in the shirt, or the toga, and then the highlights on the crown. So that's very curious. The clothing, if we're considering the crown or the headpiece, whatever, clothing, the clothing has the brightest value. There's a little bit of white back here too on the red. And then secondarily would be the forehead and the eyelid. Then I think that maybe the red and then the blue, and then the darker yellow on the back of the figure. So the figure probably has the most contrast. Let's take a look at the grayscale. Not a whole lot of contrast in this. But yeah, the brightest values are definitely the crown, the toga, and that little splash of white behind them. And then the dark spots are those two red spots. The background here and here. I guess the green, this top part, also look darker. Everything else is pretty mid-value, mid-range. Basically, the three colors he uses here are all really there's a harmoniousness to them. The marks he makes are really wonderful in these. So my favorite artist is Degas, and one of the things that I love the most about Degas is his marks in his pastels, and for whatever reason, marks like that really they speak to me. And there's a lot of good marks in a lot of Redon's work. the point of doing these thumbnails is because you can't see a lot of detail. Like they're supposed to simplify. So that's the point of doing them like that. I'm really interested in his choice of green just for that strip on the side there. I wonder what that's about. I wonder if you remove the green, does it even affect anything? Yeah, I guess it does. I wonder what the process was to arriving at that. Like, did he start this out knowing that there's going to be this green strip there, like holding the composition in? Or did he kind of stumble onto it? Maybe he had this taped down and some paint got up under there and he peeled off the paint. Peeled off the tape and some paint came with it and there was some green underneath. So the border, like I said, the bottom is all open. The top, the right, and then the bottom left here are darker. But then right here where the head kind of pokes in is more open. The value is more homogeneous with the rest of the background. Little blast of super saturated blue, then super bright red in the middle bottom right. Yeah, this is an interesting area down here. So the eye is looking here past it, and down here is the maybe the highest contrast area in the whole piece. There's a little bit of brown in this gold. I wonder if there's a little bit of blue in there. A little bit of red up under the chin here. So with this sample size of 2, I'm going to go ahead and say that Redon is into framing. Kind of like Rockwell. I recall a lot of the Rockwell pieces used framing. Like there'd be the frame of the canvas and then another secondary frame inside the canvas. So he's got this kind of colors. Looks like an archway door. An arched doorway. Got this wild thing middle here. It's also interesting. We're thinking about focal point between the first one and this one. It seems like the most maybe vibrant or saturated or contrasty element is some abstract piece that's not the figure. Even though I think in both of these the figure is the main subject. There's another element that's kind of more salient. I like this one here because he dissolves into background. His clothing turns into blue shape here. And again, not a lot of space between the figure and the edge of the canvas, or at least the edge of the space. So in the first one, that the top of the head and the front of the head, little hair wisp, came close to that border. Close enough to produce a little bit of tension. Like, depending on how much space you leave between your figure and the border, and you can ratchet up or ratchet down the tension. And I feel like in both of these, the spacing is meant to increase the tension. There's almost a tangent here between the back of the hair and this wreath thing on the door. Tangents or near tangents also can produce tension. Notice the crazy textures in the top left and also above the arch. Oh yeah, notice that either. Like some white and blue scribbles in the top left above the arch. I like the texture of the arch itself on the right side. And that creates an interesting... Oh, wow. There's an interesting rhythm. There's this shape. This kind of like orangish shape on the right side. And that is kind of mimicking the form of the figure here. The arm coming down. The top quarter of the painting is just going nuts, just incredible. Yeah, Plumsink, I suspect that you and I share an appreciation for, I don't know what you would call it, maybe a visual dissonance. I find that I like music. I really like music that has a layer of like pleasantness and a layer of dissonance kind of matched. I like that contrast. The sugar and spice. I'm a fan of like the weird movement and texture and stuff that you get for the eyes and the ears. It's a treat. Organic things are not all right angles. It has organic angles and that random bit of Prussian blue at the extreme middle right. Yeah, right down here, right? With that orange right on top of it. There's this like this dark blue and this really bright orange on top of each other. So that's a contrast in value and a contrast in hue. Yeah, so I didn't even notice, but it's super obvious now that this is using complementary colors, right? It's all pretty much blues and oranges. And the figure, the skin tone on the figure is like a bluish brown and an orangish brown. And you can see in this beautiful line on the arm, on the right side, that arm that kind of just fades out. That's a really nice contour. And it says to me that he knows his anatomy really well. Like I was saying at the beginning, looking at some of his work, I think people might get the wrong idea about his ability or his sort of skill. But I think that to do what he's doing, you have to have a really solid grasp of the fundamentals. I've seen this picture before. When I really start looking at it, it's just a trip, and I don't know how he does it. Yeah, that's another thing about Redon that I'm noticing is, which is something that I love in art, is that the longer you look at it, better it gets. The more you start to see. This work is an absolute trip. I like the color contrast of the gold and the deep blue on the right-hand edge. Yeah, this bit here, right? Yeah, Plumsync was mentioning that too. It's really really interesting. And so, okay, let's think about that as a compositional element. We have this big form of the figure here. We have this thing in the middle. Then we have this shape with the blue behind it. And so there's three places your eye can go. And for maybe for contrast of color and value, your eye would go here. And for location in the composition, your eye would go to this part. And for being naturally drawn to the human figure, as we are, our eye would go here. And so there's a interesting rhythm between the three, and also a tension. So in this piece, I think tension is an important element. And I bet tension is important in a lot of his works. Let's look at the grayscale version. So the highest contrast, there's two spots I'm seeing right now that are high contrast. I guess it would be up here is even higher than here. But this spot and this spot at the top, this shape. And then I guess the hair and this shape next to it would be the next highest. The other point of high contrast. And then with our dark shapes, our darkest shapes here, here, and here, get this. These are all the same value, I would say. And that makes an arc this way. Then we get this shape making an arc this way. That's interesting. It's like the start of a braid. And it's all framing it in the middle. I love how the clothing in the background are the same. They just meet up here under the chin too. That's interesting. So then the back arm, the arm on our left side, the floating island. Oh, Plumsync, you're right. Just saw the arc of black on the aqua explosion in the middle. Never noticed before. Yeah, there is. There's this. We're talking about this shape, the shape of the figure, and we get this other kind of arced shape. We've got the threes, because then we had the three darkest things moving in a similar form this way, counteracting it. That's interesting. Look back at the grayscale one and see that. It's more subtle. And it's also interesting how the door, that line, like the slat where the two pieces of wood of the door meet, it comes down and it hooks up with that arc. It brings us around this way, and it brings us around to the head, the figure. We always talk about how the eye moves through the composition. If we come in the top left, we were meant to come down, come through the figure. There's this line here in the bottom, and maybe we're supposed to shoot back up. Generally like those deeper shades of blue, more saturated, more better. Yeah. I love how he did it in the first one, how saturated all the colors were. I want it to be saturated, but not dark, because it's a pretty light value. It's maybe the part of the lightest, now that I'm looking at it. The lightest parts of the piece. So far, there's a lot of gilded bits in his work. And there was that dark shape around here. And then the darkest shape up here. So at first I thought that this gold here was part of his outfit. But now I'm wondering if it's a continuation of this mark that comes across. Kind of have this almost implied stripe along the bottom. And that also is more of that framing then, right? Arch here, and then continuing it with that yellow strip across the bottom. And then the figure is almost completely on the left half. And the left half is the only part of the composition that doesn't have any border to it. So maybe the figure's clothing merging with that background makes the figure the border. That's gold undies. You can get gold undies. You can get gilded undies. You can get fool's gold undies. So there's a little bit of that yellow on the shoulder, maybe the gold, the shoulder here and in the arm. It's interesting. So we have the lines of the door, which are very vertical, and they are continuing through the figure, at least through parts of it. And so the figure is integrated with the background, not only through the blue of the clothing, but also through the direction of the hatching line direction, which is subtle. At least it's subtle compared to some of the other stuff, like the color and the shape. But there's, even if there's no outline, there's definitely line. Yeah, the blue here looks like it's part of the door, right? I wonder if there's a visual metaphor at work. We have the door as a barrier and the door as a portal. And so maybe we're being transported through the door. This saturated world of blue. I wonder what this thing is in the middle. Getting the color of that was tricky as well. Hey, he signed his name. Very small in the bottom middle. Let's put a few dots there. I remember Rockwell used his signature as a very important element of the composition. Not so much here. Very, very subtle. But it also reinforces that elementary colors, tension, line direction, and then there was the arching rhythms. The more you look at it, the more you do not understand it. How he did it, yeah. I keep thinking that he's painting in oils with a palette knife, but that's not the case. I don't know if I'm going to do a thumbnail of it, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this one just in relation to the Mucha study. Because this is a very Mucha kind of a piece. At least superficially. I'm thinking of this one that we studied previously. I'm interested in the similarities and the differences. The elements are the same, right? There's a figure. It's in a contrapposto pose. You know, the arms are down here versus up here. but there's also kind of a vignette of flowers around it. The color of the figure is the same too. This one is very clean, very sharp, and very smooth. And the Redon one is maybe much more dreamlike. I wonder what the figure is holding. It looks like there's looks like she's holding something. Anyway, I don't know what more I have to say about it. I just noticed that there was kind of similar elements, and interested me. The figure has a outline in both of these as well. That's kind of unusual for Redon, or maybe just the pieces that we've looked at so far. But the figure has pretty solid, full-on outline, and looks like, I don't know if that's hair or if that's like a transparent skull, a translucent skull with the brain showing through. That's what I want to say about that. I like this one. This one freaks me out a little bit. So again, this framing, have this arch, the door, kind of gets lost and then found again a little bit. Figures framed here. We have this branch, flowers on it. Very Mucha-esque. Were Mucha and Redon contemporaries? A good question. I feel like they might have been working around the same time. 1892. This piece is 1892, and Mucha was then and about, I think. Wonder if they ever hung out. Again, putting a little, just bit of a thing on the very edge of the composition. Almost looks like a electrical cord coming from this, like a little scribbly line coming out. I just don't suppose that's the case though for 1892. I guess they had electricity, but did they have home electricity? Were there outlets? And then this, it looks like a kind of a sculpture or something on top of a pedestal. The pedestal almost gets completely lost in that background. It's like radiating lines coming out of here. And the figure is framed in this doorway. So using framing, I'm gonna put that at the top here because that is an important thing. That is, we've got it 3 times now, so I'm gonna say framing. And then the flowers are this dark kind of reddish on the right, and then they become this brighter orange as they move in front of the figure. I guess they're maybe capturing the light or the glory of whatever this object is, or maybe whatever this figure is, or whoever this figure is, rather. Occult seeming. Yeah, there's something mysterious about, well, there's something mysterious about all of his work, I guess, but this piece in particular. Get the color here, here, and here. And then just a little dash there, I just noticed. This yellow. Almost all of the yellow is here. There's not a lot. There's none on the top. At the bottom, there are these flowers. So maybe that's poor observation. This is a really kind of saturated blue at the edge of the door. The ground is kind of green. Some orange in the flowers and a little bit of orange on the shoulder. There's a shape here that comes down from the top and pretty much merges in with the background, with the inside the doorway. It's a very subtle line that's kind of delineating the top of the arch. I'm wondering if I'm inadvertently learning how to use watercolor pencils right now. Let's think about value. To me, the brightest spot is here. Kind of really bright on the cloak, and the white of the clothing. Wow. Yeah, it's all in here, basically. There's a little bit. So again, there's like a horizontal strip. Kind of like with this yellow here in the bottom. horizontal towards the bottom, holding the composition. And this vertical next to the figure. There's this vertical here, there's the figure, this horizontal, and then a little bit of a glint on the disc. This is all just really dark behind him. And it is just comes straight down from the top of the composition. Breaking that arch. This shape really strong coming in around the figure. Beard is darker and behind the face here. And a little darker here. The whole thing looks like it's illuminated from the bottom front, so the shadow above the arch might be the shadow based on the light source. Yeah, you're right. It could be the shadow either of the thing or of the guy. Yeah, the light source would be coming, I guess, here. Somewhere off. You can see the ground there. Also, he signed his name again here. Wild stuff. I love his use of these like glinty flecks. There's a lot of glinty flecks. Interesting place to sign. Yeah, he did it here too in this piece underneath this horizontal strip of gold. He signed his name underneath it. And then here there's the horizontal strip of this light color. So it's really subtle and really, really tiny writing. But it kind of reinforces the composition. I didn't see his signature in the first one. Let's look at that first one and see if he's signed his name there. Oh yeah, it's there. It's very tiny down here. Bottom left. Second one looks like he used gold leaf, but I don't think he did. Yeah, it's so luminous that it looks like it could be gold leaf. But I guess it's just good control of his materials. Interesting to have such a small signature that you have to look for it. Maybe it's to get people to look at the piece more when they search for Where's Waldo feel. I wonder if he's just wants to get out of his own way. A lot of artists feel self-conscious about signing their work. We're all told we should, though. I know artists that really don't like it. Yeah, Ursa, that's a good point. I always felt lucky as a woodcutter that there's a space that I'm supposed to sign my name that's not in the picture itself. Like we always, we write the title and the edition number and our signature underneath the image. And I feel like that took a lot of the stress and responsibility from signing it. But you can kind of tell a lot about someone's personality, or at least you might be able to tell a lot about somebody's personality based on how they sign their work. Rockwell always signed his pretty big. I always wonder though if it's about self-esteem or if it's about marketing when it comes to large signatures. For small signatures, it could be self-esteem, or it could be they don't want to take you out of the piece. I think Redon's signature matches the kind of vibe of his work really well. He does have a signature in this piece too. Can anybody else find it? Yeah, way bottom right. There's this kind of half circle here in the background. It's diagonal here. Diagonal here. And then there's orange. So more framing. More framing in this one. So framing gets to underline. That's the big thing here. We have this frame at the top. We have this kind of blue frame on the top and the bottom. We have this line on the bottom. Even this figure on the right. If we take it that this one is our main subject, then we have this figure framing them too. Oh, wow. Now check this out. Plumsync. It looks to me like there's a white beam of light that's coming down from the top middle, moving towards the middle right, and it bounces off the top of this person's head, and it bounces right at our main figure. Look at that. Just about to say that. That's really cool. I didn't notice that first. Interesting. We have these white bits appearing throughout too. How would I? So I'm trying to think about how I could say this. In all of these pieces, there are colors sort of appearing throughout that are just kind of accents. Like in this one, the kind of yellow appearing throughout. In this one, there was some maybe that yellow too. The red here. Here it's white. I think there's white here, 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 and here. The accents. Accents and movement. Beams radiating out of her head. Yeah, it looks like it's coming from either from the head and going up and out, or coming from the top and reflecting off. She looks like she has a little like Jean Grey psychic telekinetic force here. I think then that this would be the brightest part of the composition would be above this figure's head. We have the direction of the eyes. The gaze is looking from this figure, looking that way. And then this main figure looking down, maybe. Even the shape of the face is pointing down. Just like the whole head, the eyes and the chin are kind of all indicating in the same place. And we have this wild activity happening here. One thing I've noticed about his proportions, something that I tended to do for a long time and I've really tried to adjust, is I always tended to put my eyes up higher and have a longer nose. Only when he does it, it looks good. When I would do it, it would look weird. You think that's his wife and daughter? Let me see. Lay down. I'm going to try to do more pencil on this, but I'm going to lay down some base colors first. While these are drying, I'll think about value. This is another complementary color scheme. Blues and the oranges. The bottom two lines are not parallel. They seem to be pointing to the right. You mean here? Yeah, it's at a slight angle, isn't it? Yeah, the surface of the table, whatever. That's right. Like it's drawing you to the younger, and then the light shooting out projects you towards the top and then towards the main figure. It's interesting that you guys see it going that way. Very interesting that you read it like that. To me, it's coming from the sky, hitting her, and then bouncing off. But I like the idea that it might be emanating from her as the starting point and then going up. And the curving lines at the top and left bring the energy around. Let's look at this in grayscale while this dries, and then I'm going to throw some colored pencil on there. So yeah, the brightest part is on the right. But actually the cheeks of this figure and above the eye are also pretty bright. There's a little bit down at the bottom, a little bit at the top. I think the focal point here and here. So there's something that I've been seeing through all of these is that he kind of has a misdirect. The thing that we would naturally go to as the focal point is being maybe counteracted or makes you second guess based on the way he uses contrast. So typically the focal point is also the place with the highest contrast, but his focal point is not the place of highest contrast. It's his highest contrast is always a secondary location. And I wonder if that is also in the service of tension. I'm going to put tension again here. Because it was definitely the case in this one. And I think it's the case in all of these. Like we so reliably go to the figure and we so reliably go to like the center, but then putting the point of highest contrast over here on this on the very edge of the composition creates that tension, or it's both vying for our attention. And he did it, like I said, he did it here with using the center and the lightest spots and the highest contrast to counteract the figure where we would naturally go. He does it here a bit, and definitely here. That's a very interesting. It's bold. Darker stuff down here. Looking at the values, get this. It's interesting because this blue is really saturated, but it's actually not bright. Look at how bright it looks. The blue on the figure, on the shoulder here, it looks pretty bright on my screen. Actually, middle gray, just so saturated. Oh, the circle motif is repeating. Okay, because the circle's here. There's a circle motif at the top. And then there's more of them here. I think that's the only place. These ones in the figure, and then at the top of the composition. Diagonals. A little bit of green again here. So in the first one and this one, he uses green as an accent. Directs around, making you linger longer over the painting. That multiple kind of focal point tension. Instills movement and makes you look longer, perhaps. Yeah, I wonder if it also adds to the mysteriousness of it. Kind of the misdirect or the subverting of expectations. I think, you know, when you look at them, you don't consciously expect the figure to also be the place that's the highest contrast, but maybe subconsciously you have this expectation, and then the subversion of that maybe can add to the mystery as well as the tension. Mystery is a word I should write. These are definitely mysterious works. Not only in the content, but also in the execution, as we are learning, or at least as I'm learning, and Plumsink, you said that you are as well, just how challenging these pieces are to try to reverse engineer. Wonder how much is weathering over the years. Do you mean like maybe the works have degraded over the years? They've been altered. They've had some kind of sort of fixative. I don't know what they would have had for fixative back then. But I imagine that if these have been in either collections or in museums, they would have been well taken care of. If they were just in somebody's basement or attic, then maybe not. So in a lot of art, horizontals are considered a stabilizing aspect. And in his work, there's a lot of horizontals, and in a sense, they're stabilizing, but I think they are also an enclosing force. Maybe that also is another thing that subverts our expectations. Like in this first one, this frame, rather than being stabilizing, it feels encroachy. And here, this table, although it is a flat element, it's pushing us up, and it's got all this texture happening in it. It doesn't feel quite as placid as it might feel in the work of another artist. Like you said, Redon is hard, he blows your mind. Yeah, me too. What an exciting artist. Degraded or colored. Yeah, I wonder how much that is, Kay. I wonder how like light fast his pastels are, and how well stored they would have been. A little bit of black here. It increases tension. You can almost say that he's using a straight line is to increase tension, curves to instill movement, stasis and motion, potential and kinetic energy. Stasis and motion, I think, is a good dichotomy. So the contrasts, right? All the artists we look at have used different use different strategies for achieving contrast. Why don't we think about that? Straight versus curved, which is also stasis and motion. Figure versus the traditional contrasts. Colors versus the emotion. So the very saturated, very vibrant, bright colors with these sort of sad figures. And then I also think stasis versus motion, we also have that with the figures. Figures are very undynamic in their posing, right? And then the motion is in the marks. So that's another the lines themselves have the contrast, the straight versus the curve, but also within that the way that the figures are applied versus the way that the marks are applied give us that contrast too. Subversion of expectation. The figures are all at least serious, if not somber. All the S's, somber. Wow. All right. So does anybody else have anything to say about any of these works? The ones that we haven't looked at yet. So I think that's all we've got time for. Briefly. Like this one is the same, right? This one has that... Maybe we should have looked at this one. There's that somber, static figure, and then all of the energy is in the marks. And we have the bright colors as well. At least the background. It's like the whole bottom third is a blank. And then the top right, there's that oval that kind of is the same as the bottom third. Almost a diagonal. The figures... two figures are kind of a diagonal, top left to bottom right, and that white shape and the oval, and then the white squared off shape, top right to bottom left. Oh, and then this one here, it's also that same kind of mood of the figure, but then within the figure and within the background, so much movement. That is a really, I really like this contrast. The more that we're looking at it, the stasis versus the motion, Plums Inc. There's a lot to this, and the different ways that it's achieved. I think that out of everything in all of these, this might be the core. Also, he signed his name down here. This one has that kind of, the figure is static and everything around it is moving. It feels like the flowers are exploding out from the center. Yeah, the core of his work, I think, might be that dichotomy between stasis and the motion, the placidity and the hecticness, and all of that. Oh man! And one more time, I want to look at these ones. Just to let everybody see once again, he's a really, really good artist, like in a traditional sense. He's good at drawing. He can do this one has a little, this one's a little bit moody, but he can do really nice portraits, you know, Sargent-esque portraits. The guy does some really lovely work. And like I said before, I love this. This is my new lock screen on my phone. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the shape of the hair, the black, and then the flower, the looking straight at the viewer. It's unusual in the Redon way, and yet it's almost Sargenty. So this was mind expanding. Thank you, Plums Inc., for redeeming and choosing Odilon Redon, an artist who was not on my radar. Doesn't work. He's an artist that I was not familiar with prior to this. And I'm very happy to have made his acquaintance. Take care, everybody.